You ever get that feeling, when you're working on something big and you suddenly realize just how much is left to do? That's kind of what this McKinsey report felt like, for me at least. It's a total reality check on this whole net zero thing. I mean, you've been thinking about this global energy transition, right? Like what it really takes to actually hit net zero by 2050. Well, we dove deep into a net zero reality check, the hard stuff, to bring you the key takeaways.
Yeah, what I found really interesting here is that we often talk about these abstract goals, right? So this report, it kind of forces us to look at the actual reality of like transforming an energy system that's built on fossil fuels.
So like it's like trying to swap out the engine on a plane,
Yeah.
while it's still flying. I mean, we're talking 60,000 power plants, a billion vehicles, mountains of steel and cement that all need to change.
Yeah, and the report, it kind of drops a bombshell. We're only like 10% of the way to where we need to be by 2050.
Whoa, 10%. I feel like a lot of people think we're well on our way. I mean, you see solar panels and electric vehicles popping up everywhere. It's easy to think, "Oh yeah, we're getting there." But this report says, "Not so fast. We've only just scratched the surface."
Yeah, I like this. It's like thinking you've climbed a mountain when you've really just reached base camp.
Exactly. So help us understand, why is that 10% figure so sobering?
Well, I think you have to look at the complexity. I mean, McKinsey, they identified 25 key challenges to getting to net zero, and 12 of those are what they call systemic.
Okay, so unpack that for us. What does systemic even mean in this context?
Okay, so picture this, right? Like dominoes. You knock one over and it triggers a chain reaction. So one change in the energy system, like switching to EVs, it triggers a ton of other changes. Manufacturing, infrastructure, even consumer behavior, the whole thing. So these systemic challenges, there are these interconnected shifts across multiple sectors.
So it's like it's not just about inventing cool new gadgets, it's about rethinking these whole systems.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. I mean, the report, it highlights some big ones, like transitioning to renewables like solar and wind, decarbonizing those heavy industries like making steel and cement, and then making low-emission hydrogen and carbon capture technology work on a huge scale.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Mhm.
Okay, so I guess it's okay to feel a mix of emotions here, right? Like excited about the progress we are making, but also kind of overwhelmed by how much is left to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's complex. There's no doubt about that.
So, where does this idea of easier versus harder challenges come in? I think I saw that in the report.
Yeah, so basically the report found that like half of those 25 challenges, they're actually pretty manageable. We already have the tech and the solutions. We just have to, put them into action. But the other half, that's what they're calling the hard stuff. And that's what we're gonna dive into today.
Okay, I'm ready for some hard stuff. What are some examples
Yeah.
that like really drive this home for people?
Um, well, take scale, for example.
Yeah.
We're seeing some amazing advances in things like heat pump technology.
Yeah, heat pumps. I've heard they're becoming so much more effective even in colder climates. That's huge.
Totally. And even nuclear energy is having like a resurgence.
Yeah.
But the big challenge, the really hard thing, is taking these great technologies and scaling them up to meet the energy demands of, you know, billions of people. It's like having this delicious recipe,
Right.
right? But then you need to cook it for a banquet with thousands of people. It's not so easy.
Right. It's not just about the ingredients, it's about that whole production process. Okay, so scale is one thing, but what about the actual stuff we need to like build all this clean energy tech? We got to get that from somewhere, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that brings us to another hard stuff challenge, critical materials. So we're talking lithium, cobalt, all those rare earth elements that we need for batteries, solar panels, all of it. And the demand for this stuff is projected to just explode.
Hmm.
And it could even outstrip the supply.
Wait a minute. So are you saying we're about to run out of the ingredients we need for a green future?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's not really about a shortage in the Earth's crust. It's more about accessing them fast enough
Yeah.
and in a way that's, sustainable. And then you throw in the whole geopolitical layer to this, like the production of a lot of these materials. It's concentrated in just a few countries.
So it's not just a tech puzzle, it's also like an economic and political puzzle.
Yeah, big time. And then it gets even more complex, like when you start to think about technologies like AI.
Oh, right. I was wondering when AI would enter the chat. Everyone's talking about how much energy all these data centers and AI development are using. So is it helping or hurting our progress toward net zero? I mean, is it friend or foe in all of this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, right now, the energy AI is using, it's a tiny, tiny slice of the whole energy pie. especially compared to like what we need for this whole transition. But the key is going to be how quickly AI, how quickly it develops.
So it's not the main energy guzzler yet?
Right, exactly. But imagine if AI could like help us design these super efficient solar panels or even help us find entirely new energy sources, like stuff we haven't even thought of. I mean, that's the kind of potential we're talking about.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. It's like having a superpowered assistant helping us solve this massive puzzle. But let's get back to the here and now for a sec. One thing I hear all the time is, what happens when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing? How do we keep the lights on with all these renewables?
That's where we need to kind of shift our thinking. It's not about like a one-to-one swap, like just replacing a coal plant with a solar panel. It's about this system-level approach.
Yeah, we need to rethink the whole energy grid.
You got it. We need grids that can handle the ups and downs of renewable energy. That means investing in storage, so like batteries and pumped hydro, and developing like smart control systems that can balance the supply and demand, in real time.
It sounds like we're talking about like a super smart energy grid that can adapt on the fly. Pretty cool. But what about hydrogen? There's a lot of hype around hydrogen, but also a lot of concern about its, efficiency and cost. So when does hydrogen actually make sense? When is it just hype? Help us sort that out.
You're right. I mean, there's a lot of mixed messages out there about hydrogen. It's not a silver bullet, but it does have potential in certain areas, like heavy-duty vehicles, long-distance shipping, and even some industrial processes that are tough to electrify.
So it's not about replacing every car on the road with a hydrogen-powered one. It's about like strategically using it where it makes the most sense.
Exactly. But there are still challenges. I mean, hydrogen is like such a tiny molecule. It can leak through the tiniest cracks. It's kind of like trying to fill a sieve with water. We also need to make the production and distribution of hydrogen more efficient.
Right. And let's not forget the infrastructure needed to like move and store hydrogen safely. That's a whole other challenge. So it sounds like we're still figuring out hydrogen's role in all of this.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, but that's why, research and development in this area, that's crucial. We got to keep pushing forward.
Speaking of crucial, I got to ask the question I know is on everyone's mind. Money. How much is all this going to cost? What's the price tag for a cleaner, greener future?
Well, McKinsey's analysis, it estimates we're talking about a pretty major spending shift. So right now we spend about $5.7 trillion a year on our current energy system, which includes both, high and low emission investments.
That's a lot of zeros.
Yeah, it is. To get to achieve a low carbon system by 2050, that spending would need to increase to $9.2 trillion per year.
So it's a huge investment.
Yes. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds incredibly expensive. And you're right, it will require a massive investment. But the cost of doing nothing, that's far greater. We're talking about potentially catastrophic climate impacts, economic disruptions, and social unrest.
That's a sobering thought. But it's not just about spending more, right? It's about spending it differently.
You got it. We need to shift investments away from those high emission activities like fossil fuel extraction and put it towards low emission technologies and infrastructure. Imagine if we took all the money we spend on fossil fuels right now and put it into clean energy instead. That's the kind of shift we're talking about.
So it's less about finding new money and more about spending smarter.
Absolutely. And for those who are kind of leading the charge, whether they're CEOs or policymakers, this research, it offers some valuable insights on how to approach this transition strategically. One key takeaway: categorize your decarbonization efforts. Figure out what they call the low-hanging fruit, those areas where you can implement existing technologies quickly and cost-effectively. Get those wins early.
Prioritize those quick wins. I like it.
Exactly. But for those harder challenges, collaboration is key. We need to build partnerships across sectors, across supply chains, research institutions, the whole thing. It's like a massive group project for humanity.
A group project with pretty huge consequences if we don't get it right.
Yeah, no pressure, right? And it all comes down to a mindset shift. We need to embrace system-wide innovation. That's the key.
So it's not just about tinkering with individual technologies, it's about reimagining those whole systems.
You got it. That's the heart of it.
So we were just talking about how we need to rethink like entire systems for this whole energy transition to actually work. But what does that actually look like? Like on the ground? Like let's say we're CEOs and we're tasked with decarbonizing our businesses. Where do we even start with that?
Well, that's where McKinsey's framework of those easier and harder challenges that we talked about earlier, that becomes really, really helpful. So remember, about half of those 25 challenges, they're considered easier, meaning we already have the technologies, we have the solutions, they're ready to go. We just gotta implement them.
Okay, so that sounds promising. Let's talk about some low-hanging fruit. What are some examples of those easier challenges that companies can tackle right now?
Well, electrifying passenger vehicles is a great example. I mean,
Yeah.
electric vehicle technology has come such a long way, and in a lot of cases, EVs are now cost competitive with gas-powered cars.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more EV models on the market all the time, right? Which is
Mhm.
great, gives people more options.
Exactly. So for businesses that have vehicle fleets, switching to EVs can be a relatively straightforward way to really cut emissions.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. What about buildings? I know buildings use a ton of energy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Improving building energy efficiency is another one of those easier challenges.
Mm.
I mean, we have things like smart thermostats, LED lighting, better insulation, and those things can significantly reduce how much energy buildings use.
And a lot of times those upgrades, they pay for themselves over time, right? Because you have lower energy bills.
Right. Exactly. So there's a solid business case to be made for those kinds of improvements.
Okay, so we've got EVs, we've got building efficiency as some early wins. What else? What other low-hanging fruit is out there?
Well, reducing methane emissions in the oil and gas sector, that's another area that's ripe for action. Methane it's a really potent greenhouse gas. And those leaks from pipelines and other infrastructure, that's a big problem.
So we're talking about like literally plugging those leaks.
Exactly. And the good news is we have the technology to detect and fix those leaks.
Okay, so it sounds like there are definitely steps that companies can take right now, but let's be honest, we can't ignore the tough stuff. So give us an example of one of those big systemic challenges and walk us through why it's so difficult, why it's so hard to tackle.
Well, decarbonizing those heavy industries like steel and cement production, that's a perfect example of a really, really tough challenge.
Okay, so what makes those industries, what makes them so difficult to decarbonize?
Well, I mean, they depend on these incredibly high temperature processes that are really, really hard to electrify. Plus, the chemical reactions that are involved in making steel and cement, they inherently release CO2. It's part of the process.
So these are processes that are like deeply ingrained in how we make the materials that we depend on every single day.
Yeah, exactly. We can't just like swap out a couple machines here and there. It's about like fundamentally changing how those materials are produced.
So what are some of the potential solutions that are being explored?
Well, one promising avenue is using hydrogen as a fuel source.
Mhm.
But as we talked about before, there are those big hurdles with producing and transporting enough hydrogen. It's not a simple swap.
Right. We can't just plug hydrogen in and expect everything to work perfectly.
Exactly. Another approach is carbon capture and storage.
Yeah.
So that's where you capture the CO2 emissions from those industrial facilities, and then you store it underground.
I've heard about that, but how realistic is it to do that on a large scale?
Well, I mean, the technology exists, but it's expensive,
Yeah.
and it's pretty energy intensive at this point. We need more research, we need more development to bring the costs down and make carbon capture, make it more efficient.
It sounds like decarbonizing these industries is going to be like a long and complex process.
Yeah, it will be. But the good news is there's a lot of innovation happening in this space. Companies are experimenting with new materials, new processes, new technologies,
Yeah.
and governments are starting to create policies that actually encourage companies to decarbonize.
Okay, so it sounds like everyone has a role to play in making this happen.
Exactly. And this really highlights how important that system-wide approach is that we've been talking about. We need companies, we need governments, we need researchers, we need investors, we need everybody working together to solve these really, really tough challenges.
So let's talk more about the role of government. How can policies be created that actually support this transition to net zero?
Well, policies are essential. They're essential for shaping markets, guiding investments. One really important tool is carbon pricing, and that's basically where you put a price on carbon emissions.
So you're essentially making polluters pay for the environmental damage that they're causing.
Exactly, and this creates a financial incentive for companies to reduce their emissions because it hits them where it hurts, their bottom line.
Makes sense. What other policy options are effective in your view?
Well, governments can also use things like subsidies and tax breaks
Hmm.
to encourage the development and use of clean technologies like renewables and EVs.
Yeah, so that would help make those technologies more affordable and more competitive with fossil fuels.
Exactly.
Mm.
And governments can also establish standards and regulations that promote energy efficiency and emissions reductions across different sectors.
So it sounds like we're talking about like a mix of a mix of incentives and regulations to kind of steer us in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's crucial for these policies to be consistent and long term.
Yeah.
You know, that gives investors the confidence to make those long-term investments that are needed for this transition. We can't have policies that are changing all the time,
Yeah.
with every new election.
Right. We need that stability. So we've got companies innovating, we've got governments creating policies, and hopefully we've got investors putting money into clean technologies. But what about the individual? Where do we fit into this whole net zero equation? I mean, it can feel overwhelming sometimes, right? Like our choices don't really matter.
Yeah, it's easy to feel that way, but individual actions, when they're all added together, they have huge power. Consumers can make a real difference in this transition.
Okay, so give us some examples. What are some things that we can do like in our daily lives to support this transition?
Well, one of the most impactful things you can do is reduce your own energy use at home.
Yeah.
So just simple things, right? Turning off lights, unplugging devices, using energy efficient appliances, all that stuff, it really adds up.
Yeah, those little things do make a difference. And if you're in the market for a new car, consider an electric vehicle.
Yep, exactly. And for those who can't afford to buy a new EV right now, what about public transportation, right?
Hmm.
Biking, walking more often, all those things can make a difference.
Yeah, get those steps in. And when you're shopping, consider products that are made from recycled materials or from companies that are committed to sustainability.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of your voice, right?
Like,
Talk to your friends, talk to your family about climate change and why it's important to act.
spread the word. Become an advocate for change.
Exactly. And let your elected officials know that you support policies that promote clean energy and climate action.
So it's about making choices with our wallets, how we vote, and
Yeah.
and making sure our voices are heard.
You got it. And remember, even small individual actions can inspire others to do the same. And those actions can add up. They can add up to create some significant change.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. We all have a role to play in this transition. By making mindful choices, by speaking up, we can help create a more sustainable future. We can create a better world.
That's inspiring. It gives me hope that we can actually make a difference. But let's be realistic for a second. This is a huge issue, right? It's complicated, and there are bound to be setbacks. There are bound to be challenges along the way. What are some of those potential roadblocks that we might encounter as we work towards net zero?
That's a great question. One potential challenge is making sure this transition, making sure it's just
Mm.
and equitable.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we need to make sure that the benefits of this clean energy transition, that they're shared widely.
Yeah.
That everyone benefits, not just a select few. We can't leave anybody behind in this transition.
So, for example, we need to consider the potential for job losses in the fossil fuel industry, and make sure that those workers have opportunities to transition to new careers
Right.
in the clean energy sector.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we need to make sure that clean energy technologies, they're accessible and affordable to everyone, not just those who are, wealthy.
Equity is key. What other challenges do you see out there?
Well, geopolitical tensions are another challenge. Remember how we talked about how the production of those critical materials, those materials that are needed for clean energy, they're concentrated in just a few countries.
Right, and that creates vulnerability
Yeah.
and the potential for conflict.
Yeah, for sure. We need to diversify those supply chains, make sure those materials are sourced responsibly, and ensure that people and the environment are protected during the extraction and processing of those
So
materials.
it's not just about going green, it's about doing it the right way.
Absolutely. And we also need to consider public acceptance.
What do you mean by that?
Well, not everyone is convinced, about climate change or the need to transition to clean energy. Some people they're concerned about the costs, while others might be worried about how this transition will disrupt their lives.
So we need to build public support
Yeah.
and address those concerns.
Exactly. We need to communicate the benefits of a clean energy future in a clear way, in an honest way.
Right.
And we need to involve communities in the decision-making process. So people feel like they have a say in what happens.
It's about building trust and
Right.
making sure everyone feels like they're part of the solution.
Right. And we have to be upfront about the challenges. This transition won't be easy. There will be bumps in the road.
But as you said earlier, the cost of doing nothing is far greater than the cost of making this transition.
Exactly. We need to keep our focus on what we're trying to achieve. A healthier planet, a more resilient economy, and a fairer and more equitable society for everyone.
Those are definitely goals worth fighting for. But let's be honest, this is a massive undertaking. It's going to be messy, and there will be disagreements and setbacks along the way. How do we navigate those difficult times and stay focused on the bigger picture? How do we not lose hope?
That's where leadership comes in. We need leaders who can inspire,
Hmm.
who can motivate, who can build consensus. Leaders who can paint a clear picture of what the future can look like, and rally people around that vision.
So it's not just about technical expertise. It's also about those essential communication skills and those
Mhm.
people skills.
Absolutely. We need leaders who can listen to different perspectives, address concerns, and find common ground.
And leaders who can make those tough decisions when necessary.
Right, exactly. There won't always be easy answers. There will be choices that involve trade-offs and compromises, but we have to keep moving
We
forward.
can't get stuck.
Exactly. We can't let the pursuit of perfection be the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
We need to acknowledge that this transition, it's going to be messy, and just keep working towards a better future.
That's a great point. It's not about waiting for the perfect solution. It's about taking action now with the tools and the knowledge that we have.
Right. And as we learn and as we innovate, we'll discover those better solutions along the way. We got to keep going.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Well said. Well said. And it's a journey that requires everyone to participate.
This deep dive has given us all a lot to consider, and I'm sure our listeners are ready to hear about the innovations and the solutions that are being developed around the world.
Let's get into that.
Wow, we've spent this whole deep dive unpacking the realities of reaching net zero, and honestly, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, we've talked about the massive scale of this whole thing, the need to rethink entire systems, those hard stuff hurdles, and even the potential roadblocks along the way. It's a lot.
It is, but we've also seen the progress that's being made, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about some of the exciting solutions that are emerging, and the power we all have to contribute to this transition. There's reason for optimism, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely feeling that. I'm ready for some good news now. Let's shift gears and explore some inspiring examples of how people are tackling this challenge and making some real progress towards a net zero future.
Sounds good to me. One area where we're seeing really remarkable advancements is in renewable energy.
Of course. I mean, solar and wind power have become so much more affordable in recent years. It seems like they're popping up everywhere.
And that's not just an impression. We're seeing a huge surge in renewable energy capacity all over the world. For example, did you know that China is now the global leader in both solar and wind energy?
China's leading the way. I gotta admit, I'm a little surprised by that. What's behind that incredible growth? What are they doing?
It's a combination of factors, really.
Yeah.
Strong government support, continuous technological advancements, and those falling costs that we talked about earlier. China's made a conscious decision to invest heavily in renewable energy infrastructure.
So it's a deliberate strategy. It's not just a coincidence.
Exactly, and it's paying off big time. I mean, China's on track to meet its ambitious renewable energy goals. They're some of the most aggressive in the world, actually.
That's impressive. What about other regions? Are we seeing this kind of progress elsewhere?
Absolutely. The European Union has also set some ambitious targets for renewable energy, and a lot of European countries are making some significant strides in that direction.
I've heard that Denmark is a real pioneer when it comes to wind power. Is that true?
Oh yeah, definitely. Denmark now gets over half of its electricity from wind power. Imagine that. Over half of an entire country's electricity needs met by wind.
Wow, that's incredible. I guess it shows what's possible when governments are really committed and they actually invest in these solutions. So it's not just a pipe dream, it's actually happening.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's not just limited to developed nations either.
Mm.
India is also quickly expanding its renewable energy capacity. So it's truly a global effort at this point.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But I'm curious about innovations like beyond solar and wind. What other promising technologies are out there? What's on the horizon?
Well, energy storage is a field where we're seeing a lot of exciting developments right now.
Right, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We need ways to store all that renewable energy, right? For those times when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing.
Yeah, exactly. And there are so many different approaches being developed right now. I mean, we've got batteries of all shapes and sizes, pumped hydro, and even newer technologies that are still in the research phase. It's really exciting.
I remember reading about that massive Tesla battery in Australia. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
That's a perfect example. That Tesla battery is helping to stabilize the grid in South Australia and provide backup power when there are outages.
It sounds almost futuristic, doesn't it? Like this massive battery just keeping the lights on for an entire region.
Yeah, it's a testament to how far battery technology has come in recent years, and there are countless other companies and research institutions working on new and innovative storage solutions all over the world.
This is what I love about this topic. There's so much innovation and creativity happening right now. It's really inspiring.
Oh, absolutely. There's
Yeah.
there's a real sense of momentum building. People are excited about this, and they're putting their minds to work to find solutions.
What about transportation? We talked about electric vehicles, of course, but are there promising developments in other modes of transportation as well?
Yeah. The aviation sector is another area where there's a lot of interesting research and development happening right now.
Air travel has always seemed like the toughest nut to crack when it comes to decarbonization. Like how do you get those big planes off of fossil fuels? It seems almost impossible.
It is a challenge for sure. But there are companies working on electric planes and sustainable aviation fuels that could significantly reduce the impact of flying.
So you're telling me we might be flying on electric jets someday. That
I know.
sounds crazy.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, there are still challenges to overcome, of course, like battery weight and range, but the industry is making progress. They're working on it.
Okay, that's exciting. What about shipping? I mean, those huge cargo ships, they use a lot of fuel, right? Are there cleaner options being explored for them as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are ongoing efforts to develop and test cleaner fuels for shipping, including hydrogen and ammonia, which could be real game changers.
It sounds like we're seeing innovation like across the board in every sector imaginable.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? This push towards net zero. It's not just about addressing a challenge. It's also creating some incredible opportunities for innovation and economic growth.
So it's not just about saving the planet. It's about creating a better, more prosperous future for everyone. I like that framing.
Exactly, and it's important to acknowledge and celebrate the progress that's being made. It gives us hope, and it keeps that momentum going.
This whole deep dive has definitely given me a renewed sense of optimism. It's easy to get bogged down by the enormity of the challenge. But seeing all these innovative solutions and all these dedicated people working towards the same goal, it's incredibly inspiring.
I agree. I mean, this transition to net zero, it's not just necessary, it's achievable. We have the knowledge, we have the technologies, we have the ingenuity to create a truly sustainable future. I really believe that.
And by working together,
Yeah.
right, across borders, across industries, we can make it happen. I'm confident of that.
Absolutely. To our listeners, we urge you to stay engaged, stay curious, and be part of the solution.
Every action, no matter how small, it can contribute to this collective effort, whether it's reducing your own carbon footprint, or supporting businesses that are making sustainable choices, or advocating for policies that accelerate this transition. We all have a role to play.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of net zero. We hope it's left you feeling informed, feeling inspired, and empowered to make a difference.
Remember that the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.